Okoro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect. Garland front of the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs Media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo TV. Watch over 100 channels of live sports and TV for half the cost of cable. There's no contract and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com. The 2022-2023 NBA season is over. Big congratulations to the Denver Nuggets. I love seeing a team win its first championship. Love seeing Jamal Murray win an NBA championship. Oh, Canada, indeed. Awesome performance from them. I think the best team won. And if I'm not mistaken, Carter, I think this was our title pick for both of us going into the season. I know it was mine, at least.
It was mine going into the season. I think I went with the cowards way out for the postseason, where I believe the Bucks were my pick. Whoops. But yeah, I mean, they were not only my pick, they were my hopeful pick too, you know? I just love the way they play basketball. You know, we spend so much time complaining about the way certain teams in this league play basketball in a way that really grinds our gears. So like when a team does the exact opposite, and even when they're killing you, you just cannot help but appreciate the teamwork, the skillfulness, the selflessness. And then, you know, Jokic is the best player in the league and my favorite player to watch in the league. So it's easy to root for a team like that. And, you know, very happy, a good fan base. I've always been fond of Nuggets Twitter.
Shout out Adam Maras and everyone at DNVR. They do really, really cool stuff there.
Yeah. So it was just cool. And it was cool just to kind of, I don't know. And frankly, Justin, it was nice just to be right. You know, like I was like, my gut says Nuggets in 4. The Heat's zombiness had Nuggets in 6. But like, you know, like all through this postseason, I'm like, this team is better. I'm pretty sure they should win, and then they just did not win. So like, it was kind of nice just to get a chill, we're better than you series, where my understanding of the game jived with what happened.
Yeah, and again, I think I don't want to take anything away from any of these matchups, any of the rounds that led to this point, but it kind of does go to show you a little bit what shooting variance can do in today's game, because Miami was not a good shooting team throughout the season. They got unreasonably hot for the first 2 rounds in particular, and then that just kind of regressed back to normal, right? Like their shooters, guys like Max Strus and that came back down to earth, and the Nuggets just had too many options. I remember when we lost to Denver, I believe it was the game in Denver, and we were just like, man, Jokic, when he's got this many weapons around him, I just don't think there's any defending him. Like, I just don't see how this team loses unless someone else kind of, you know, plays to a similar level and takes advantage of the opportunities. But we want to end this season with a mailbag. One, because we tried to do draft coverage today and that didn't work out. We'll do that next week. We'll get someone that knows what they're talking about. So this is always the easy pivot, but it is fitting now that the season is over. The build up for next year, the 23-24 season is underway. And I want to kick off the mailbag with an appropriate question, given that the NBA championship was just claimed last night. Joe asks, rank the last 5 postseasons, so 2019 through 2023, as your favorite to least favorite. Do you want to go first, or do you want to hear mine, Carter? Because you're not going to be surprised by mine.
I'll hear yours.
This one's my favorite. The Denver Nuggets winning is my favorite title. I'm not just being prisoner of the moment. Some of this had to do with I wasn't able to watch a ton of 2021. I was on a trip. It also felt like in 2021, the way that I knock it a little bit is it felt like Giannis was the best player in the league, but it didn't feel like the Bucks were necessarily like the best team. They just, you know, you had the KD foot on the line type thing. There was a lot of kind of moments along the way, and it just looked like Giannis kind of overcoming a lot of those flaws and issues with the roster. Plus, it was just a weird COVID year. So 2023 gets the nod. 2021. I'm going to go 2020, even though it's the bubble, and I know it was weird. It was kind of nice to see LeBron win, and especially when you have to consider the context of the previous, or last year, which is the Warriors winning. I'm never going to enjoy that. It is what it is. And then my least favorite title is 2019. Toronto. What more do I need to say? Like, after the Cavs had their window of excellence run up against the KD Warriors and not getting a lucky break throughout that entire time, to see Toronto catch every single lucky break and just the weirdest championship ever, that's always going to be one that's going to grind my gears. So that's my list, Carter. What's yours?
I will agree with your starter with 23. I just think the basketball was awesome. I think it was crazy, which was also fun. The Cavs were in it, which even though it was not a fun series, it was cool that the Cavs were in it. So I will start with 23. Then I'm actually going to go 20. I thought the basketball in 2020 was so good. You got to remember how good even the conference semis were. You had Celtics beating the Raptors in 7. You had the Nuggets beating the Clippers in 7. It was just so darn fun watching.
There's also a time when we really needed basketball.
Yeah.
Like, we needed an escape.
Absolutely. Remember the Luka series against the Clippers when it was just Luka just gunning against Paul George and Kawhi? They lost in 6, but it was like, oh, Luka's arrival.
Donnie versus Jamal.
Yep. The conference finals were dope. Heat Celtics was a war. Lakers Nuggets was, in my opinion, a lot closer than the 4-1 indicated in that Nuggets run. No one saw a conference finals run for the Nuggets that year. So I think 20 would be my next. I would say 22 would probably be after that. I thought, even though it was all the teams I hate finals, or conference finals other than the Mavs, I still thought the basketball was really good. 21, I would say after that, you had the fluky Trae Young conference finals run that never felt real. Then you also had, like, do you remember the Clippers made the conference finals that year? They like limped into the conference finals.
Oh yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, like I said, that was just such a weird year that even though I was really happy Giannis won a title,
there's a lot of weirdness around it. And then 2019, because just any KD year was just not fun for me. The Cavs were bad. And just the Warriors felt so unfair, and then the way they lost was just literally every player got hurt, and the Raptors barely won anyway. So I think that would be my order. I thought 2020 bubble basketball was nuts. People sleep on how good everyone was when they didn't have 80 feet of depth perception messing with their jumpers.
Yeah, and also just, not travel, not any of that weird stuff. I'm actually looking forward to, now that it looks like the Sea Bears, I'm jumping ahead here. Now that it looks like they're pretty good, they make the playoffs, man. They do host city, kind of like NCAA, where city hosts the tournament, all the playoff rounds there, single elimination basketball. I'm excited for that. Winnipeg's trying to bid for next year, so I'm really, really hoping that we get that for next year. Next question, though, is from Toby. He asks us, who would you rather see make a leap next season? Isaac Okoro or Dean Wade? To me, this is really easy. I think Isaac Okoro is the clear choice. Like, we've already seen 2 years in a row now that Isaac Okoro in the starting lineup, different starting lineups, but those lineups have been really good. They've been really, really good in the regular season. And I think if Isaac Okoro were to make a leap and take another level in his game, I think that would be something that could really pay dividends and would solve a lot of the issues, because we're still trying to figure out how we can translate regular season success to playoffs. I think an Okoro leap alongside the progress we expect the core to make would be a big time difference maker.
I think, I think it's a no doubter that's what it is. You kind of just look at what the more impactful leap would be, and I think for either of them, a leap really is no doubter good in a playoff rotation, guys. I think that would constitute a leap to me. And if Wade does that, then we have a third big. If Okoro does that, then we have a fifth starter. I think I'd rather have the latter than the former. So, I think it's definitely Okoro.
Yeah, it also kind of ties into what our buddy Mac Perry asked us. Shout out the It's Cavalier podcast. What would constitute a breakout for Isaac Okoro in your eyes, Carter?
done. Playoff player. Get guaranteed playoff player. Like no.
Go a little. I want you to elaborate just a little bit beyond that.
Sure. I really just think it is. He needs to be such a capable offensive player that there is marginal doubt at best about whether JB would keep him in. The jumper is good enough. The finishing is good enough. The secondary and tertiary playmaking is good enough. And and he's not going through, weeks at a time where he's just, averaging 6 points a game. I think that is a leap to me. Or, he just makes more threes. Making more threes at the same rate would probably also constitute a leap, because my bar is he a no doubt rotation guy in the postseason? Or because if there's entire series where JB is just going to have to go, it might not be for ice, then I would say he has not taken a sufficient jump forward.
That's fair. To me, the 3-pointer, it's almost uninteresting. He attempted 3.7 per 36 this year. And I think if you're expecting progress from the guards, progress from Evan Mobley, Jared Allen still to be a focal point of this, I just don't know how much more volume you're going to see. Maybe if that gets up to, let's say, 5. So, not a crazy improvement in terms of volume, but another 1.5 per game. And he shoots the percentage he did after missing, the first 12 of this season. So, shoots 37 to 39%, 5 attempts per 36. I would be happy with that. But to me, a breakout would mean him starting to fill the box sheet in more ways. And this is something that our buddy David Zavak has mentioned many times, but there's just too many times that you don't feel him. We've already talked about him becoming an event defender, getting blocks, getting steals, that sort of thing. I want to see him round out his game and fill in more of those gaps. And I know we're repeating ourselves a little bit, but it's the offseason. It's going to happen. I would like to see him go out there and get rebounds. I'd like to see him, make the right pass, be disruptive, get those assists. The type of glue guy stuff you see from your guy, Bruce Brown, and other players like that.
If only the Cavs used ice better, he'd be Bruce Brown. That's what the Discord tells me.
Okay, thank you for your honest representation of that argument. But
it's not an honest representation.
I think that is kind of what you want to see. You want him to see him be that glue guy beyond just stand in the corner and get jump shots. And I think they started to build out more of his game. But I guess maybe it even comes to what we had talked about in the past, which is the skill development, getting to the point where the coaching staff feels comfortable using him in different ways, using him as a screener, using him, as a cutter in a bunch of creative ways that kind of showcase whatever growth he's had in his offensive game. So I just want more. I want a little bit of more of everything from Isaac Okoro. And I think that's what a breakout would be, because there's no scenario where he's going to be a lead option in a lot of these lineups. But I do think as a glue guy, there's gaps that he can fill to make them a more complete team.
Absolutely, buddy. Let's move on to Vinny, who asked, which player do you expect to have the most productive season next year?
So that's a tough one. I guess, from a scoring standpoint, I think Donovan Mitchell is going to be the leading scorer for the Cavs. I think he's going to be the leading scorer on the Cavs for as long as he's here. Productive, though, maybe if we're going to define it as maybe increase in production, I think it's going to be Darius Garland. I expect Darius to take the biggest step next year. I think Evan Mobley obviously has more, room to grow between where he is now and his ceiling than Garland does. But I think Garland's ready to take that next step. And I think we can see him going from all-star snub to legitimately in the all-NBA conversation. And I think that he's a guy that has more experience than a lot of these other guys on the roster. And when you're talking about the young guys, now I expect him to really kind of use last season and how it ended as fuel. So I'm going to say Darius Garland.
I think if you're asking who's going to have the most productive season, you're probably still kind of in a way asking who the team's best player is going to be. I still think it's going to be Donnie. I just think he is the most productive player last year. The Cavs should be making offseason moves that make his life even easier in terms of looking to add shooting. I feel like Donnie more than Darius benefits from his situation, and doesn't, as a volume scorer. So yeah, I think it's got to be Donnie until one of the kids takes it from him.
Okay, well, let's just pivot here and go with some of these Garland questions, because I do think you're right. Like, I think Donovan Mitchell's probably going to be the best player on the team next year, although it does. Let's go with Tony's question. Our buddy Tony Pesta asks, how high is Darius Garland's ceiling, and what does another leap look like for him? And I want to get your thoughts on that, Carter.
First off, Tony has been wilding on Twitter recently. He's just been making some big, bold, loud takes for the people.
You know what? I respect it. I haven't been on Twitter that much lately,
Good
man.
for you. Good for you.
It probably is very good for my mental health, but it's just so hard to use it now. Even
it's a bad website.
I've missed a lot of the discourse. So
but either way, I feel like in terms of leaps, it's just going to be, I just feel like it's so hard to discuss a leap in the context of Darius, because it's not like his skill development has a crazy long way to go. It's going to be in the form of being a more devastating high volume pull up 3-point shooter. It's going to be in finding better angles to finish layups. It's going to be in manipulating the pick and roll even better, getting stronger and more physically mature, so he can hit those spray out inside out passes with a little bit more zip. I'll tell you, that's a thing I really noticed watching this finals, is almost every player who drove, when they kicked it out to a corner 3-point shooter, they were firing that ball out. There was so much pace on the kickouts, whether it's Jimmy or Jokic or Gordon off an offensive rebound. And like, that's something I think, those are the little things I think the Cavs can learn from watching the postseason, of like kind of taking that next step. Like in the postseason, the closeouts are hard and on balance. So it's like, you can't give them that extra half step because you didn't put enough zip on a pass. And those are the kinds of things that you're going to see with Darius. Like the leapiest leap would be the volume 3-point shooting, maybe some extra strength to handle the banging of the postseason. But like, I'll go with volume 3-point shooting for now. And in terms of his ceiling, it's top 5 point guard. I think is probably fair to say. I think he's going to be a Team USA point guard. If I don't know about this World Cup, but eventually I do think he's got the right pedigree to do that, and the right, mental makeup to be a great player. And it's a decent bellwether, since all the great point guards still are American. I'm
going to fight you, man. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jamal Murray. That is a backcourt for the ages, man. They're very good.
They're very good.
We're coming for you, USA.
But yeah, so I think it's a solid bellwether to say that if he's in the conversation for being on Team USA, which if everyone's playing, as of now, I would say then, top 5 point guard is probably appropriate.
I really like that you brought up the point about the passes, because that was one thing, even looking back on the Knicks series, like the pick and roll possessions, like when I was looking at that for Evan Mobley, that was something I noticed, was a lot of times he's kind of like lobbing it to the corner, like there isn't that zip. And when those passes are coming, a second and a half late, or even a half second late, that can be the difference between an open shot and passing up a shot because of the closeout, right? And that's something I agree Garland can get better at, the whole team can get better at. And like, what a leap for him looks like to me is, like you said, if he adds some strength and he's drawing contact a little bit better, the defensive positioning that we've seen from Darius Garland becomes more effective, because you can't bump him off the spot the same way that you're able to now when he's at a slender frame. That would be really helpful. Getting the volume 3-point shooting up. Like for me, honestly, I think the reason why I expect a leap from Darius Garland is because I feel like there's less needed from a skill development standpoint, and it's really about him putting it all together, because I think the high watermarks and what he does when he's at his best are ridiculously good. I think his ceiling is an all NBA point guard that's in the conversation for best point guard in the league. Like, I think that that's the type of ceiling that he has. And if he does up the 3-point shooting, if he does add some strength and draws contact better, plays better defense, and the passing becomes a little bit more refined, and the aggressiveness that we've seen at times becomes more consistent, just doing what he does more consistently at a higher level, I really do think can get him into that kind of all NBA conversation. And that's probably why I feel most confident about him making another mini leap, because when you get to this point of your career, those leaps become cerebral. It becomes about your decision making, the way that you react to what defenses are doing because you have more experience. Yeah. And I guess this also ties into the last Darius question we have, which is from Project NBA, and he asks, can Darius at 26 be better than Donovan Mitchell is right now at 26 years old? I
think yes. And you would think the answer would be no, just because of how superior Donovan's body is. The 7-foot wingspan, the above the rim finishing, the strength, the core strength that I'm not sure Darius's frame is really built to add. But if you listen to this podcast, I am predisposed to basketball genius. And I think Darius is a basketball savant as a playmaker. I think he understands the game at a truly elite level. And as a result, I think that raises his metaphorical ceiling as high, if not higher, than Donovan Mitchell's current game is right now. So I say yes. What say you? Good sir.
I mean, you know that I'm in on this, that he can be that good. And I mean, I think when you're looking at the theoretical best version of this Cavs roster, you have Donovan as the leading play finisher, Darius right up there in scoring along with him, running the offense, Evan Mobley as the most impactful overall and kind of best player. But I think the guards are always going to be responsible for the lion's share of the offense, even if Mobley gets up to that 20-point per game range. So I do think that Darius can get there. I think prior to last season, there was an argument that Darius was as good or as impactful as Donovan Mitchell had been the previous year. Now, some of that was Mitchell having a down year, Darius having a great year as the guy. It was neck and neck, right? And I think when you're talking about, selling Donovan Mitchell on re-upping with Cleveland, I think the pairing with Darius Garland, the way that he made his life easier throughout the season, having a young guy next to him after he's had all those years in Utah where that wasn't the case. He had some great vets there, but he didn't have another dynamic star that made life easier next to him. I think that's a big, big part of, what this team wants to be moving forward. And I think Darius having the keys is a really, really important of the Cavs being the best version of themselves.
Absolutely, buddy. Luckily, it's not a competition. I think they both complement each other very, very well, especially on the offensive end. Connor asks, what is the coolest, most unique piece of memorabilia you have?
You want to go on this?
Yeah, because my answer stinks.
Are you a memorabilia
I'm not
collector?
A memorabilia guy. My parents had a strict no souvenirs policy on vacation.
Really?
And yes. They were like, it's a waste of space. We'll never use it. There's no points. Waste of money. It's a waste of energy. We're not doing souvenirs. Gift shop at the zoo. Forget about it, buddy. We're not going in there. So, even at the game, we're getting a hot dog. We're not getting peanuts and popcorn and that was not happening. And it wasn't like I think it was really, my dad's a real justice guy. And he's not paying, $9 for some popcorn, Yeah. So now whenever I go to games, I splurge. However, the one thing that did stick is I do not collect.
Moneybags Rodriguez.
Yeah. I do not collect anything. The best I got is my Akron Beacon Journal front page sent to me by George Thomas, who's a reporter there. The day after they won the title.
What was your first autograph you got? If you have got
brother, you're gonna love it. Samardo Samuels.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
mine was.
Go ahead.
Mine was from my first Cavs game that I ever attended, which was in Minneapolis. I got a Leon Poe autograph on my game ticket.
Oh hell yeah! I went to my first game when I was like 17. I was I was, again, my dad didn't like sports. So if your dad doesn't like sports, you don't really go to a lot of sporting events, guys. And I finally had enough money to go, and I went, and we got there super early for shoot around, and went up and got autographs. I think I had an Andy. Samardo was the first one, and then it was like Andy, and I forget who else signed, but I've since lost the jersey, sadly. And buddy, it would have been worth a lot. So the souvenir I have is one. Do you have an answer for your favorite piece of memorabilia?
So I no family policy here. I just I don't collect a lot of memorabilia. I'm not even someone that really documents. Like if I'm checking out nature, I'll take pictures in nature, but I'm not a big sit at the game and hold my phone out all the time kind of guy.
That's just getting braggy now. We get it. You live in the moment.
No, it's not even that. It's just I don't think I'm that interesting. I will say I think the coolest bit of sports memorabilia. It took me a while to think about this, but I think it's the jersey that the Cavs sent us last year with my last name on it. To me, just kind of as a commemoration of this partnership, I think nice. It's like the coolest thing for me. It's ridiculous that we still get to do this, that we haven't had to change what this podcast is, and I don't know how long it'll be until they get sick of us, but I think that is going to go down as one of kind of my most cherished possessions. So I'll go with that one. Sentimental. I'm a sentimental guy.
Absolutely, buddy. Waji asks, any surprise non-Cavs players you could see getting moved this offseason?
I guess we got to go big names here, right? So I could see Zion. I guess Shams reported that the Pelicans are interested in that third pick. I could see maybe Zion being in consideration for that. I don't know how much that has to do with off-court stuff or, I guess the fact that he can't stay on court to begin with, right? I think maybe that's something that they're considering. Maybe Bradley Beal. It's going to be interesting. I'm very curious to see if some big names move. I know Karl Anthony Towns has been in a lot of rumors. I saw reports saying that he could be moved by draft night. We'll see what happens there. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a few teams kind of shuffle the deck going into this year, because the new CBA is going to be tough from a team building standpoint. And I think teams are going to try to get out ahead of that. And if you're a team like the Cavs that doesn't have a lot of assets, but maybe can help facilitate some of these deals, maybe there's going to be opportunities that we don't really foresee. So I'm rooting for a lot of player movement, because history suggests Kobe Altman is someone that teams like dealing with. He's very accommodating in these multi-team trades, and has managed to find value in those spots. So for a team that doesn't have a lot of cap space or a lot of first round picks to offer up, I think rooting for a lot of player movement is to our advantage.
Absolutely. I'm going to have three answers here, each in increasing spiciness.
Okay.
The least spicy, DeAndre Ayton. I just think, it feels like there's probably a lot of scar tissue here, and the team really needs depth. And the role he ended up playing on that Suns team, kind of could be replaced by, Jock Landale sometimes was giving them better minutes than him. So that's my least spicy. My medium spicy, Tyler Hero. I think they might be going big game hunting for a Kyrie. I think they knew they didn't have enough offensive talent when it came to the postseason. And that's an old team that is only going to get older. Their window is starting to close. So I think they might try to prop it open by chasing Kyrie.
I think I saw a report of that Tyler Hero first round picks for someone like Bradley Beal would be something that he would consider. I forget who reported that, so this is reckless, but hey, we're talking recklessly.
Yeah, and then my spiciest take that I kind of think might happen, Trae Young.
Ooh, that is spicy.
I feel like you don't leak reports about wanting to get out. You saw reports that were if it goes bad, they'll look to take offers with Trae. You don't do that unless you're pretty 1 foot out the door already. And I think we've seen with players of Trae Young's caliber, sometimes it's better to be early than late in terms of cut and bait. And you find a team that's desperate, you chase, maybe the Mavs or someone like that. and then try to just mine what you can out of the situation. So Trae Young would be my spiciest pick.
I mean, I would like any scenario where we don't have to play Trae Young 4 times a year. I wouldn't be upset with that. Gardick, throw me another question. What do we got next?
Yeah. Hey, Justin, could I get 60 seconds to Sea Bears?
Oh, hell yeah, buddy.
And
start the clock.
Go.
Only 2 games for the Sea Bears since our last update, but the first one was an important one for the hatred in my heart. Winnipeg versus Saskatchewan. The Battle of the Prairies was a tight one, with the Rattlers leading by 2 points after 3 quarters, but 27 points from Teddy Buckets and 25 points for EJ Anasoke were enough to power a fourth quarter rally, with Jelani Watson-Gale hitting the target score game winner at the free throw line. Then they came home for just the second time all season, trying to keep pace with Calgary for the best record in the league against the 1-3 Edmonton Stingers. But turnovers and a terrible shooting night led to Winnipeg's first stinker of the season, falling 97-68 to Edmonton. But a pleasant surprise for me seeing former Cavalier Chandler Vaudrin lace it up for Edmonton. Unfortunately, he didn't stand out, scoring just 7 points in 30 minutes. The Sea Bears play next Thursday as they host Antoine Broxy's Brampton Honey Badgers. Winnipeg will enter their home matchup against the defending champs with a 4-2 record, currently in a 4-way time for the second best record in the league.
Oh, very well done, Justin. I watched a little bit of the Edmonton game. It was my first Sea Bears action, and I picked a stinker, man. And then I eventually had to move over to, the NBA Finals.
Probably a good call for you.
So I'm not out. I did sign up for CEBL Plus, which is free. And I will be watching some Sea Bears this summer.
Yeah, I'm excited to have some basketball still going on. I know I'm planning on watching a little bit more WNBA this year. Really don't feel comfortable commenting on WNBA just because there's so many people that are so passionate about it. But I've really enjoyed what I've watched so far, and League Pass is so affordable with WNBA too. So I'm looking forward to checking out those games. Man, I saw a tweet in reply to you saying that you were ready for the 60 seconds of Sea Bears, asking for a Bomber stock. That would just go off the rails, man. We can't talk CFL.
No.
I need to have some self-control here.
That's not a good part of your brain. I don't like to encourage that part of who you are.
Our next question is, who provides support for this podcast? And that is, of course, Zoom. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects.
You swerved me, buddy. Well done. Next question from Kane in the Discord. NBA Twitter loves mock trades. We see them constantly, Justin. What are some actual reasonable, in all caps, trade expectations you have for the team this offseason?
I'm not going to say like any players because we really don't know who's going to be available in the market, but I think you just got to look at teams that are at different points in their timeline. Like I saw people talking about the OKC Denver trade, being like, what? Like a first round pick for first round pick, 2 seconds going the other way.
Awesome trade for both teams.
Made a lot of sense. Denver's trying to capitalize on their window now. OKC gets a future pick. 2029 right now is the furthest away that you can trade a first round pick. And that helps them with future trade offers. So, finding ways to get around the Stepien rule if you have multiple first round picks within a year, right? They can theoretically offer more first in a consolidation trade than other teams. So looking for those opportunities where two teams have different priorities, I think it's going to be really important. Do the San Antonio Spurs with all their young guys, maybe look from moving on from a guy like Doug McDermott, and you have an opportunity there, or even Zach Collins because they're drafting Wemby, right? Like maybe there's an opportunity there to help teams get off the salary. Maybe there's all those opportunities in third team trades. I don't think the Cavs are going to be landing a lot of headliners, right? Like I don't know what opportunities are even going to be available, but they do have some partially guaranteed contracts. Guys are on valuable kind of lower end deals. I think looking at those kind of players in like the $7 to maybe even $12 million range is probably your best bet. I guess there's always the outside chance of a larger sign and trade. I know Chris Fedor had speculated maybe Okoro could be used in a chip like that. I can't see anything like looking at the free agents, I just can't see a scenario where that makes a lot of sense. The only one that maybe would be possible is Gary Trent Jr. But then you look at less complicated scenarios where he can just go to a team like Orlando as an unrestricted free agent, right? Like sign and trades are really, really difficult to pull off. So I think it'd probably be something on a lower scale.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of reasonable expectations, what I do think is reasonable is to expect the Cavs to be very, very active on the trade market, even if it's just swapping our 8th, 9th, and 10th men for another team's 8th, 9th, and 10th men, you know, and finding a team that either has different sets of priorities than the Cavs do right now, or have maybe players that the Cavs like that maybe they're a little bit out on, that, you know, maybe the Cavs send some of the guys that, you know, that the other team likes, but they're not so hot on. You know, I think you got to really be active and look, because the reality is things went poorly enough in the postseason for the Cavaliers' depth pieces that you really don't want to be like, well, we signed one free agent and then we rolled with 4 or 5 minimum guys and our team is different enough now. You know, I mean, you might be able to do that and it might work, but I don't think that should be plan A. I think plan A should be, let's try to get a little, you know, refresh of the surrounding piece of the roster so we can at least put in some competition, you know. Not, you know, I talked on our Bigs review about Dean Wade, kind of just saying like, you know, even though I'm not like out on Dean Wade by any means, I don't think he should go into the season as a guaranteed rotation member. So what does that mean? You have to find players that are good enough to compete with Dean Wade for that rotation spot. The easiest means to do that is going to be the mid-level exception, but it's also going to be looking at trades. So I think Plan A should be an active team in the trade market. You know, making a lot of calls, getting a sense of kind of who's available and how. You know, ideally, you get a steal like KCP for your backup point guard. Hi, Denver. You know, where a player is slightly undervalued because of the situation they're in, and you send players that maybe were looking better than they should have looked because you had Nikola Jokic, which the Cavs do not have. I can't confirm. So I think activity is a fair expectation. Whether something happens or not, you know, they can't just make a trade to make a trade, but like I do think activity is a fair expectation, and activity for at least a rotation player is a fair expectation.
Yeah, I expect them to be in a lot of kind of rumors and trade talks and in a lot of these conversations, and we'll see what's possible, right? Like it's possible that they're not able to accomplish every single objective that they had in the off season, and maybe you get like 70% of the way there, and you have to kind of reevaluate throughout the season and continue to tinker. But I definitely expect them to be aggressive. And Chad asks, who is the number one realistic offseason acquisition to make us title contenders? I don't think that exists. As much as I am high on the Cavs, and that is my brand, I think we're still probably another year away. I think that the next step for this team is winning a playoff series, at least one, being really competitive, showing that they're taking those strides, showing that their game and what they do well translates to the postseason. I think acquiring shooting will help, but when you're talking about the number one acquisition that makes us title contenders, it is an evolved Evan Mobley. Like I think it's an evolved Evan Mobley. I think it's an evolved Darius Garland. I think it's Jared Allen getting better and taking another step forward. I think it's the internal growth that is going to take us to title contenders. And maybe there are those moves on the margins. Like you mentioned, Monte Morris for KCP. Monte Morris is a really, really good backup point guard. Like I think he's a great player. And that's just one of those kind of small moves on the margins that the fit just helped. It was just enough help for that core of Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, just the right role guys when it comes to Bruce Brown and KCP that helped kind of accentuate what they do well. But it was the individual growth of those three guys, as well as Michael Porter Jr., that really got them that championship. And I think it's going to be the same thing with the Cavs.
Yeah, I do think there's a road to title contention. next year, but it's a pretty unlikely one. And for this current Cavs team, I think it would likely be an amalgamation of moves where, just like Denver, they hit they took small swings but still managed to hit doubles and triples with them, because it's not like the Cavs have a lot of big hacks in them right now, from a roster construction standpoint. So you're gonna have to get a little lucky and win trades, or I think if they had a better postseason showing, you could have talked yourself into the kind of things that happens for good teams with likable young cores, where you go, hey, maybe they can sell Jeremy Grant coming here, and you try to do like a sign and trade or something like that, where those are like the kind of big things. But I don't think the vibes coming out of the postseason are good enough to really think about any of that stuff is even marginally realistic. So I think the answer is there is no move. But if they hit 3 doubles with, and add 3 no doubt rotation players that all play well in the postseason, and all the current core guys get better, then maybe that's what it looks like. But I just don't think there's a singular move. Even if they get all of my first choices, they're probably not a title contender yet. I think again, if the Knicks series had gone better, if they'd won that series and then lost to a tough Heat team, maybe we feel like they're a little closer, but it did not go well. It went very, very bad. And thus you have to downgrade their trajectory just a little bit based on how bad the first round series went. Even if that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean I've given up on the core, but I just think they showed they weren't ready yet.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. And honestly, I feel like we're already answering one of the questions that's a little further down from the psychopath Hiram, who took a break from conspiracy theories to ask what our perfect off-season would be, or what an off-season and perfect world would be. Halima also asked the same question as well. And for me, really, it's finding value in the mid-level exception, getting a shooter there, maybe bringing back someone like Danny Green that can shoot, maybe finding another wing on the trade market, bringing in a backup big, these kind of small moves in the margins, like you said, swinging for a single and maybe hitting a double or two. Because if you get to the point where, obviously bringing back Karis LeVert, I think that's just something that we kind of assume will likely happen. But if you bring back LeVert, you get some growth out of the starting 5, and you find 2 more wings, whether it's free agency or the trade market, that you feel good about in the rotation, I think that puts you in a really, really good position. And here's a really important thing too. If that's what you find, all of a sudden you are in a position to use your 2024 pick on someone that you plan to keep rather than shopping that pick, which becomes really, really important with this new collective bargaining agreement. Having a cost-controlled asset, maybe you draft someone that's in college for 3-4 years.
Hi, Christian Brown.
Yeah, exactly, right? Finding those kind of value guys in the draft, I think that is where you want to get to. So I think
people are not making a big enough deal that Christian Brown has won a title 5 straight years.
Pretty cool.
3 straight state championships in high school, the NCAA championship, and then the NBA finals. This man hasn't had a bad year in 5 years, and I don't even know how. I mean, how good was his freshman team? Probably not horrible. Man, imagine if he had gone to a crappy team. He would have been miserable.
He would have dragged them to a championship. You know this, Carter.
Yeah.
But yeah, if the starting 5 plus LeVert, so that's 6. If you go from that and you add 2 more wings, maybe Isaiah Mobley steps up as a rotation big. You find another big man with maybe the biannual exception, or maybe even a trade with some second round picks or whatever the case may be. I think all of a sudden you're in a position where you really do have depth. You kind of do that thing that we've seen teams do after they make a consolidation trade, which is another transaction cycle, really helps them round out the roster. And all of a sudden you're in that position to start developing some other guys, picking players that fit what you've kind of established, what works with this team. So I think that would be my goal. That's my ideal offseason. No major shakeups, but that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, I mean, the ideal offseason, I'm going to talk in terms of kind of transactions, and then I'm also going to talk in terms of archetypes. Transactions, I think you're looking to sign a really helpful player with the mid-level, the biannual, and find one minimum signing that is like, oh, this guy's way better than we thought. So you're looking at, I'm hoping they find a way to add 3 helpful players in free agency, and make some sort of trade. I really want to see I want to see them be super intentional with this roster this offseason, in terms of just adding players who fit we have an entire season of data now to know exactly what this core forward needs to thrive. So I want to see them really try to cycle in a lot of folks who they think fit that bill. I want to see them add an elite shooter. I want to see them add a 3-4 wing, big combo that can challenge Dean Wade for minutes, and I want to see them add a 4-5 that can help. That's maybe a bit of a bruiser. That can grab some offensive rebounds, just bring something a little different without making them sacrifice their entire identity.
Is that all?
Yes. I was asked ideal.
I know. No,
so that's what I'm hoping to see. And I think if they do that, then you are not so reliant on one of your existing role players to hit. And to really take a big jump, whether it's Okoro, whether it's Wade, whether it's Rubio coming back to health. I think if you manage to nail that stuff, or nail 2 out of the 3, then you're feeling really, really good about where your roster is constructed, and you got a chance. A big thing I've been talking about with kind of focusing on the easy stuff is like, I want the onus to be on the stars. The roster has to be complementary enough for the stars on this team to either succeed or fail on their own merits. I don't think that bar was cleared last year with who the Cavs were playing in the postseason. And that doesn't mean it can't be those same players. They might just have to play better. But I feel like that they have to knock out the easy stuff, and I want to see some cycling. I think the way the season ended warrants an aggressive mindset in the way I'm talking. But again, you got to be lucky. It is so much more unlikely than likely that they add a playoff rotation player for the minimum. It's just like, or even like a 10th man for the minimum that's really good and helpful in a situation. So Kobe's gonna have to do a good job. He's gonna have to hit a double or 2 and also hit a single, and he's gonna have to minimize how many cuts he takes that don't make contact.
Yeah, and it's possible.
A lot of baseball for me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, what the hell?
It is summer after all.
It's possible that a player that they would target for the mid-level exception isn't available to them, or goes to another team, and maybe they split the mid-level on 2 players that don't check every box, but they check enough of the boxes, right? Where you feel better about your ability to have options within the rotation. It's still going to be a work in progress after this offseason. I don't think every box is going to be checked, but you just want to give yourself as many options as you can. But while we're on the subject of team building, I really like this question from Bill, who is referencing a Rob Mahoney piece at The Ringer titled "The Denver Nuggets Were Built to Last." His question is, I read this article and I'm thinking about organizational patience. Is it fair to criticize Kobe for not allowing his drafted core players to develop more before going all in on a Mitchell trade? It feels like there's a big sense of urgency to win now after this trade. And I think it's a really, really interesting question, because what we saw in the postseason definitely kind of exposed where the guys were at in terms of how ready they were for that moment. But I don't think you get that without adding Donovan Mitchell. I think that that's really important. And when you look at Denver, they did prioritize development, but they also did move some young guys that weren't part of their core to bring in vets to help accelerate the process, right? Like, even when you look at them trading, I can't believe this was 2 years ago. It was in the 2020-2021 season where they traded RJ Hampton and Gary Harris, who Gary Harris was the same age as Lowry when we traded him. That was a guy that you and I were both high on at various points, for Aaron Gordon. It took a couple of years for that to pay off, but Aaron Gordon was the right type of guy that helped bring their core to that next level. And obviously Donovan Mitchell is a larger piece than that. But even moving Monte Morris, moving Bones Highland, right? Like moving some of the young guys.
Talk about bad press. Poor Bones, man.
Oh yeah, poor guy. But just because you're not developing every single one of your young players doesn't mean you're not prioritizing player development. And I think Donovan Mitchell, even though it ended poorly against the Knicks, I think bringing him in was a recognition that these guys were already ahead of schedule. Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, they were already ahead of schedule. And they got their first taste of what that next level is going to look like. And just because they came up short this postseason doesn't mean that's always going to be the case. And I personally, I don't have any regrets about the Donovan Mitchell trade. I think it made a lot of sense. I think the fit works well. I think the core worked really well over the course of the season. And just because it does kind of accelerate the timeline, the timeline's already accelerated in today's NBA. Like I wasn't expecting to get into this, but even people worrying about the future with Donovan Mitchell, I think with every single player you have in today's NBA, you are constantly trying to sell them on the vision your team has, that we are going to keep getting better, that we're going to keep being competitive. Even if a guy is 100% committed to the team they're on right now, that might not be the case in 12 months. And I think adding Donovan Mitchell was a sign to Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen that this team is serious about contending. And it's also a sign to Donovan Mitchell that, hey, the Cavs team believes in me. They were willing to give up a lot. They are committed to trying to get better, to try to win another championship. And I think what we're going to see this offseason is the team be aggressive and pursue every option, because they are very serious about winning a championship. And I think as long as you're making those positive steps moving forward, you're going to navigate those waters of very good players, maybe looking at other situations or looking for their best path to win a championship. You're always trying to sell those guys that location is where they're at. And I think Donovan Mitchell was a big step in that direction.
Well said. I think the only thing I'll add to that is just that I think it's always fair to criticize a decision because it's all based on your personal risk tolerance. This is not going to work if the players don't do a good job developing, the coaches don't do a good job coaching, and the front office doesn't do a good job finding supplementary talent. So an all-in move, if it fails, it certainly is a splashier failure. But, we watched the grit and grind Grizzlies make, I think, one conference finals, and over, 8-9 years of that team, of that core's tenure, and they never made the big splash. And, I think depending on your perspective, I think that's about as good as you can do with a team not having made the splash and not hitting that ultimate pinnacle, like in terms of the vibes. But there's a lot of teams that, like the Jazz, for example, they didn't make any all-in moves with Donnie and Rudy Gobert, and it just fizzled out, So, I just think, you can't play the result here necessarily. Either the front office and the players are good enough to win a title, or they aren't. Other than that, it's just really about your belief system and your willingness to accommodate stress, because it is stressful to go all in. I'm certainly more stressed about this offseason than I would have been if they hadn't traded for Donovan Mitchell. But
there's a reward on the other side, right? If it pays off, and
or there isn't. This is all hard, and only one team gets to win.
Yeah, and I don't think we ever sit on this podcast saying that everything is going to work out, right? Like we talk about the decision making. It's all subjective. Everyone has their team building preferences and things like that. But it's to me, it's exciting. Like, it is stressful, as you said, but it's exciting that this is a team that's comfortable taking some risks, and they're going to make mistakes. We've seen that in the past. Nobody bats 1,000 going back to baseball there, but this is a team that has shown that they are willing to pivot. They are willing to look at all options, right? Like, we had Chris Fedor come on the podcast last summer and say, there's a core three. Closest thing to a fourth member of that core is Lauri Markkanen. And the only situation where Lauri moved was to bring a fourth member of that core, right? And I think they're going to be diligent in exploring all options. And yeah, there is a risk component with all of this, but I think the number one way to keep a star happy in the NBA is showing that you're committed to trying to win, right? Like, I think that's what we've historically seen. When teams stop spending and they stop trading picks and they stop trying to get better and they are complacent, I think that's when you see stars get kind of the most upset in today's game.
Absolutely, buddy. Let's get two more in.
Okay.
Hayden asks, possible offseason wing targets not named Max Strus, Grant Williams, or Royce O'Neal.
You missed the coward. He called me a coward at the end of this.
That's nice. I didn't have the context because you put together the rundown.
I love that he included Royce O'Neal, who's not a free agent, and we're just kind of assuming
offseason wing targets you could trade.
That's
trade targets fit.
I guess some of the names that come to mind for me: Dante DiVincenzo, mentioned Gary Trent Jr. as like your best case scenario sign and trade kind of guy. Joe Ingles.
I got a few for you.
Okay.
I think you look at I think you made a really smart point, which is if their top targets aren't available, they can either leave the position group altogether and try to chase like a Naz Reid or someone like that, or they can split up the mid-level. And I think there's a lot of solid players that you could target with like 8 of your 11 or 12 million or something like that, where you kind of, you're not paying full freight for them, but they're interesting. Someone whose name I'm a little surprised we haven't heard much around the Cavs, Bang Bang Niang. Georges Niang is an unrestricted free agent, and I haven't really heard anyone talk about him. I'm not sure he's a full...
I think our guy Ziggy has been a Niang guy. Yeah. I'll give him some credit.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's a full mid-level guy, but I think he's definitely up there. Josh Richardson, I think also... fits the bill there. To your point, Joe Ingles.
He was on my list. Yeah.
Joe Ingles fits the bill. So I think there are some interesting players in that tier below. I'm sorry, not Rui. Torrey Craig. I think also would be a good, like, half your mid-level kind of guy.
TJ Warren, Yuta Watanabe.
Yeah, Yuta, I don't know if I think he should be a biannual type of guy. Yeah. I don't think, even though he had a nice stretch in Brooklyn, you look at the numbers, they're not that good.
They're not.
The volume
I don't think he's a big minutes guy, but I think he's someone that I agree. Like, I think that's someone that maybe that minimum.
That's a great Dean Wade competition type of signing.
Agreed.
He fits that kind of bill in that biannual. So I think there's a lot of interesting players. It's weird where the middle class of this group is kind of makes more sense. Like, you're kind of taking a swing on a guy like Max Strus for the full mid-level based on, look at how the finals went. You're kind of taking a swing on a Grant Williams who was out of the rotation at times for the Celtics at the full mid-level. It's like the middle class is almost a little bit more appetizing. It just kind of comes down to, from there at the top, like, how much do you believe in those guys, and can you get them to come here?
Yeah, and there's also, as I mentioned before, the trade targets, right? Like, maybe there is an opportunity to get Doug McDermott or who the Cavs had free agent interest in the past, and we're outbid. We'll see, right? Like, they're going to explore all of those options, and I guess there's also the dark horse of Dylan Brooks, Carter.
I'm still, I know it's probably not going to happen for a lot of interpersonal reasons.
A lot of reasons, yeah.
People are sleeping on the fact this dude was second team all defense. Like, he is really helpful if he's just got his head on straight. And then the one name we didn't mention, and we'll probably end up diving into this before free agency at some point, but the Kelly Oubre name keeps a lot of Cavs Twitter loves Kelly Oubre. I'm just not a huge fan of his game, but like, this is one of those spots where it's like, it's more of a basketball taste thing than I think he stinks or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And like, I'm always going to be more amenable to signings that conflict with my basketball taste, because it's like, I just might be judging too harshly because he's not my kind of player. So
judging that Warriors year too harshly, which
I
is
am
certainly a big part.
I'm judging it very harshly.
Yeah, Yeah, and also just the 3-point numbers. I don't. Yeah, it's not
my fit, but I get why you would think so. He is a good, helpful player.
Yeah, and also Danny Green. Bring back Danny. I'd be all aboard on that. Final question from Moy Bien. God, I'm
Moy Bien. My God,
Moy Bien.
You okay?
As a French Canadian, this is really just awful. I don't know what's wrong with me. It's been a long podcast. I can't talk. How would you convince Cavs fans to enjoy next regular season and block out all the noise about this year's playoff fizzle? Not looking forward to a "wow, this doesn't matter" attitude on Cavs Twitter next season. Hopefully that won't be the case. Do you want to go first, Carter?
I do.
I feel like I'm going to ramble here.
I do. First thing I want to say is love the word fizzle. It's just a hilarious word, and we should be working in our vocabulary much more often. Okay, here's my case. This is a personal choice of how you want to engage with the season. I feel like there is a certain subset of fandom that likes to identify a fatal flaw. They like to identify the things that will cause things not to work out. And I think it's for two reasons. I think reason one, it's emotional hedging. And I think reason two is it's fun to be right. And it's nice to be able to say, I said that this would doom us. And the reality is, if you decide to harp on that side, you are more likely to be right than if you were to come in looking for reasons why the team is going to overperform their expectations. That's just how it works. Again, only one team wins the title. So, like, you can choose to experience the season that way. You can choose to commiserate with folks on Cavs Twitter about the shooting, about the physicality for the bigs, about Donnie might go to New York or whatever it might be. You can choose all those sorts of things. And even if you choose not to embrace those might be lingering. I mean, we talked all year about the Cavs' potential fatal flaws while discussing this team. But I think both of us, as a general practice, lean towards looking for fun. Because
how can this work out?
Yeah, because the reality is, for me, on the being right to having fun pendulum, and sometimes they are aligned, and those are really fun times. But I would rather
the Darius Garland leap.
Yes, I would rather. 5 years into doing this podcast, I would rather live on the have fun side. I don't think you win any intellectual points for cynicism, and I was loud wrong about how the postseason would go, and I guess it was a little embarrassing, but like if I spent all year just being like, well, we're just gonna lose in the first round, I don't know if the satisfaction of being right would have given me much. So this is a fan podcast first and foremost. So I always recommend that you just take it from a space that feels fun for you as a fan. Because I think fun should be the first priority.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And how do I convince Cavs fans? I'm not going to. Really, similar to what Carter said, we're not going to tell people how to be fans. And honestly, I think what we always try to do is...
Honestly, I did it too much last year. I think I just need to stop. I think I need to stop trying to convince people to have fun, because it's so ingrained in some people's identity to complain. I think
some people approach fandom in different ways. There's every version of sports coverage for every team that you could ever root for, and it's part of a buffet, right? Like, you pick and choose what you want to listen to, what you want to consume, and we're not. I kind of take pride that we're not the type of fans that just sit there and judge people for having Cavs opinions that we don't agree with. I think there's some people in some spaces that'll just attack people for not believing in the team, and oh no, this team's built different. I think what we like to do is outline concerns, outline the situation, what's realistic, and then we always lean towards, okay, well, we're rooting for the realistic outcome that's beneficial for us, right? Like, even with the Knicks series, I think we identified concerns going into that series that all became reality, and that was part of why they lost. But like, if we were to predict that series like 100% what happened, we brought up the rebounding, that was a major concern. But if we sat here and we're like, you know what, I think Donovan Mitchell, he's going to take the same shots, the same kind of tough shot diet that he usually takes, but he's going to miss them. Evan Mobley's going to go from 19 points per game over the last 4 months to 9 points per game. Darius is going to have one of the worst games you've seen. Like, if we were 100% right there, like that would be like crazy things to admit. Sometimes weird stuff happens in sports. Sometimes guys aren't ready for the moment. That's not a reflection of who they are. But I think what we'll do throughout the season is try to look at those trends, try to look at those macro things that we talked about all season. I mean, look how many times we caught some flack for people being like, oh, you're not high enough on this team, which is hilarious because we are objectively on the optimistic side of things. But we'll try to outline those trends and look at, okay, well, what could be the reason why the Cavs lose? What could be the reason why the Cavs win? Like, I think the rebounding trend was something that was very concerning. When we look at these big matchups, yeah, it might not necessarily translate to the postseason, but I still think that there's takeaways. I think we're going to look at, okay, is the defense that the Milwaukee Bucks are using against the Cavs something that we're likely going to see in the playoffs, or are they holding some stuff back? We'll try to look at those kind of trends. And for me, yeah, there is going to be that playoff component that we aren't going to know about throughout the course of the regular season. But I really love basketball. Like, I love this sport. I love this game. And it's really fun for me when my favorite team is going out there and winning a bunch of games. And that's why I've always compartmentalized the regular season and the playoffs as two separate entities. Because the Cavs go out there and they win 54, 55 games next season, we're going to have a lot of fun for a lot of nights. And yeah, there's big questions, there's pressure, but there's pressure because this team has real potential. This is a group that smart people are still very high on, and they've invited skepticism with how they've played. They've invited criticism with how they've played. But that is part of the sports ecosystem, and you have the ability to control how much of that you consume, how much you internalize. And some fans, maybe like they protect themselves. So if they get too high on a team and they lose, that is a hurtful feeling. And that's why they don't go on the optimistic side and they look for cynicism. Because if the Cavs go out there and they win a championship, the people that are being cynical, it's not like we're going to crap all over them. Like, they're going to be part of the celebration. They're going to have fun just like every other Cavs fan. At the end of the day, we all want this team to do well. It just manifests in different ways. So no judgment here, but we're just going to keep doing what we do. We're going to keep viewing it the way that we view it.
Yeah, for sure. And the reality is, and by the way, I do think I still like to dunk on the, like we make the Browns fan jokes and stuff like that. And maybe we should just make less. Let people fan how they want to fan. But I'll always say this to anyone.
The petty retweets will only be people that I'm like somewhat familiar with. It's not going to be randoms.
Sure. But I think the reality is, and my advice to any fan of anything is, if you're not having fun, don't do it. Don't bother. Take a break. Like whether it's Marvel movies or your favorite sports team or your favorite day-to-day hobby, if you've lost the joy for it, like, you can't just force it. It's not fun or healthy. And we have so many obligations in this life. We have so many things we have to do that if your hobby is not fun for you for a prolonged period of time, it might be time to look at kind of what you're doing. It's like what I said to Nam after the hurt of the postseason of, like, if our wives had a hobby that made them this low, we'd think they were out of their minds. So we already flirt with it, but if it's if you cross that tipping point, I hope, Moibian, that you have a very fun season, and if the noise doesn't reflect the fun you're having, then find different noise.
Totally agree. And to bring this full circle, as Nikola Jokic said, not the most important thing in the world. We we just happen to love it. We happen to love this a lot, and I can't wait. We are now in off-season mode. The stress is cranked all the way up because we're actually going to start getting answers to these hypotheticals. So big thanks to everyone that submitted questions. We really appreciate it. Shout out to everyone that tuned in live on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe. Click the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chasedown's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.